Hello and good afternoon. I was on the internet doing some research, of course, because I enjoy learning, and I want to entitle this video "A Gift to Carl Sagan." I find him to have a very fascinating mind, and find it fascinating about his views on the universe. I think he's a very learned man and really thinks analytically. I think analytically. I think he's a little creative too. And I want to get into an idea that he gave me. He made a statement in one of his videos that the mind has its own language as opposed to mathematics and the known things around us. I believe that the mind has its own separate individual language. And I want to elaborate on what I think about it personally, and about the fact of my theory of change. I'm going to interject my theory of change on this whole concept of the mind and the language of the mind. So let me go ahead. I'll read here. He stated the mind has its own language, which I will agree to some degree. But I believe that this language goes through changes because sensory information is collected in other areas of the brain, and the chunks of sensory information interact with each other to form thoughts and ideas. Okay? And in doing this, information is relayed back to these other areas of the brain to reform or change the previous state of consciousness and reality, or our scope of thought. So what I'm saying is the mind is in a constant state of change, in a constant state of learning and redeveloping. The mind is constantly sharing information all together. Our brain is not a whole working brain. We have separate parts of our mind. A lot of people always think, well, that we're a whole brain. Our thought process is a whole. Now, our conscious thought, all the information from our senses go to different areas of the brain. It collects this information, analyzes it, sends it back and forth throughout your neocortex, where all these senses communicate and refer to your conscious mind. Eventually it becomes pictured in your conscious mind. That's when it becomes whole. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that our mind is in a constant state of change. Now, depending on how much change it goes through, it can be reconstructed and rewired. I'll give you, for instance, Einstein. He was a very visual and creative man. He thought about the universe, about traveling on a wave of light, but it was imagination that he dwelt on. So he used a large part of his visual cortex, and they found when he died, when they did research on his brain, that he had extra cells called gigatel cells. I think it's on the base of the brain. I'm not sure exactly where these cells formulate or form, but he had extra massive cells. Now, it's debatable on whether these cells have any real effect and change in the brain chemistry, but I believe it did for him, and I believe it does for everyone else. Now, let me go on here with what I was talking about here. Okay, I'm going to give you a down-to-earth example of what I'm talking about. Let's say that sensory information is vocabulary words. Okay, they're vocabulary words. So in vocabulary words, they have definition, meanings, and they have functions. Okay. Let's say over time that excessive stimulation or adequate stimulation of new vocabulary words, meaning new sensory information, is developed. What would be the outcome if the mind was stimulated? Let's say your visual part of your mind is stimulated and your audio part of your thinking or your mind was stimulated, but they interacted together. No longer a separate entity between one another. It developed into a new center of your mind, where your visual and audio became a new sense. That would be something different. I mean, you would still have your eyes and you still have your ears. The only difference is there would be a connection or correlation between your hearing and your eyes. So I don't know how to explain what would happen, because I don't know what the actual outcome would be of this change. But I do believe it's possible. Now going on here, okay, so now let's go on to a little bit more thought here. Let's say that over time, that if we were able to stimulate our mind at a very high rate, in other words, use a larger portion of our brain basically, or stimulate those areas of our brain at a higher rate so that they communicate faster and they rewire the restructure of our mind, okay? What would happen if we got to the point where the mind was so comfortable at doing this, it was a natural part and natural function of the human mind and the brain to rewire itself constantly, to keep reforming itself into something new? You know, over time, you know, the scientists talk about this, and people in biology talked about the different parts of our brain, and say because of evolution, the different parts of our brains have developed a different part of our brain. So we start with the reptilian part of our brain, the brain stem, and then you go up to there, the other part of your brain. Then you have go all the way up to the neocortex, being the highest part, the highest function, you know, the temporal lobe and stuff like that. Well, if those areas of the brain build upon themselves, and if we talk about adaptation and the evolution of time, how the brain will change later on, let's just say we had a way of accelerating the rate of change of the human brain, which I think is possible because we can accelerate things. We've learned how to accelerate things in science by a thing called catalyst. We give it a reaction, and it causes something else to change and to redevelop into something else. And I love that word catalyst. That word catalyst has so many applications in science, and so many applications in making us look beyond the scope of what we see right now. But what I'm suggesting is that the mind is capable of perceiving about anything. And we found through time, these people that perceived these ideas and concepts later on became science facts. You know, they always say science fiction ends up becoming science fact. Well, what about the possibility now, if you were to think right now, okay, the state of our mind right now is the way it is, okay? Let's say that you could think that the mind would envelope into something far greater than it is now and rewire itself. In other words, it would be able to think on its own, basically. Okay. In other words, okay, let's use a computer for instance. A computer has, you know, RAM, a working model of memory, right? What would happen if computers started randomly thinking and you know, just like the human mind? There would be a change, just like there's change in computers today. They run more efficiently, and they run faster, they have different operations. Well, this is similar to the mind, but except the mind is more complex, and the mind is what is causing all these changes. It's not just, you know, matter. We're forming matter to make changes, like we form these computers. And we put all these ideas together, and we're forming something. We're manifesting something in front of us. So we're able to manifest things here now, so that later they come out. So what I'm getting at, the human mind, if we really worked on it, we could train our mind to rewire itself automatically, and the mind would communicate at a much higher rate. The electrical output of the brain will probably be increased a little bit. But as far as the speed and process at which the mind will work will be accelerated, but the only difference is our concept of acceleration would be different as opposed to the mind. To the mind, it would be normal. Okay, just like the processing speed of a specific computer, it's normal for it to be instantaneous. Well, if we could do that in the real world and create those things with our minds have that capability and probably beyond, because they haven't found anything to match the process of the human brain and mind yet. They're trying to. But at the point they come to that, we'll evolve mentally and adapt mentally to equate with it, be able to interact with it. So we'll never go beyond what we create. we'll have a perception of what we're going to create later on, and it'll manifest itself. Just like we have an idea in our mind, and later on it manifests itself. So I just want to get it out there that there's more to what's going on around you than what you know. You know what I mean? And we're going to see a lot more in the future here. We're going to see the fact that the universe changes. And within the universe, there are things that we're not even aware of yet. And if there are multi-dimensional universes, and the laws of physics operate and change in these different universes, and if we interchange and interact with these universes and dimensional changes, they're going to be the constant change. We're going to be under a constant form of change. I mean, it's neat how that we keep intact. We develop a specific reality we feel comfortable in, and even as our mind develops, and our scope of our reality changes, we still feel comfortable and we adapt to it. So don't be afraid of change, for one thing, and the other thing is, I'm really thankful for these learned men of the world to give me ideas to work on. You know what I mean? You just can't sit still and not do anything. You don't have to be a super genius in college or be a known physicist or scientist or anything like that. You could be just a normal mind, just like Einstein was. He was just a normal mind, but he was curious and he explored. He explored the inner workings of his mind. This is what allowed him to come to a point of understanding some of the things he did. And just like the rest of the scientists of this day, they're willing to think. They're willing to reach out. They're willing to go out, even be criticized, ridiculed for their thinking or their ideas on things. Don't get me wrong. I personally believe in a God, and not the way that the rest of this world tries to form God. They try to put God in a box. You can't do that. If something is absolute, if something is absolutely complete, you can't change it. But now, we as human beings, we're not absolute. We're constantly changing. We're developing. Our mind is always developing. If we can live long enough, our minds will restructure itself and be more efficient. And on top of that, you would be able to do fantastic things. In fact, I honestly believe you can do fantastic things now. I'll give you, for instance, you have a vivid collection of memories. Maybe they're not in full detail, they're a little hazy, but you got other parts of your mind that collect those bits of information and can draw them back together. But you could slowly piece your memory back together, and you could visit your memory, visit past times. The thing is, it's not just the concept of thought, it's all the sensory information too. Say, have you ever had a dream and everything felt so real and so tangible and so exciting and wonderful and different? Or have you ever woken up from a dream, abruptly woken up from a dream and still felt the sensation of that dream that was an unreal sensation? It wasn't like an emotion that you're normally accustomed to. That is because there are parts of our mind that have not been explored yet or developed. We have an understanding of this, okay, because there's a part of our brain, if we expose that, we wouldn't be able to associate reality from unreality. In other words, we'd be living in a mist. But we had to have a differential there. We had to know the difference between real and unreal. For now. But what happens when we get to the point where we can recreate our memories, recreate our thoughts, and recreate a separate reality? You know what I mean? Because science has proved this too. This will blow your mind. That we manipulate atoms, we manipulate our surroundings. If that's possible, if we manipulate our surroundings, stuff like that, why can we not think or develop a new form of thinking or a new reality within ourselves? Why can't we be the creators of our own destinies? I believe that's very possible. I believe that some people are trying to keep it hidden. Okay, but you can't. These people are going to grow. They're going to adapt. they're going to evolve to their environment. So all these hidden technologies and all these hidden concepts of thoughts and principles, one thing you cannot do, no matter how hard you try to suppress the mind, no matter how hard you try to program the human mind, it is resilient. There are still parts in your brain that can still overcome and change. Yeah, of course, there are probably technologies out there that can program you, make you do things that you don't want to do. Of course, that's a possibility. But for right now, I think everybody should start exploring their inner self. We explore space. We explore the ocean. We explore microbiology, microbes, small little things, the small particles. And why don't we start exploring the very place that all these things root from, internally? Okay? It says in the Bible, I don't know if you're a believer in the Bible or not, but it says, the kingdom of heaven is within. All that knowledge is within. So why are we always looking externally to find information? It starts internally anyhow. We just get so acute to our outside environment, we forget about the fact that we have an inner environment, an inner part of our being, our mind. So we have an outer reality, which is all around us, which is sensory, sensual, touchable, and then we have an internal reality, which has the same capability. We haven't worked on it. We haven't caused adaptation to go into effect in our minds. I think it's time now we come into a tipping point in our evolution, and evolution meaning adaptation, because I don't believe in Darwin's theory to the fullest. I believe that we do adapt and we evolve, but we adapt and evolve in our own species context. Okay, so now what I'm suggesting, start thinking inwardly. Start thinking. Use your imagination. Daydream. Don't be afraid to daydream, because this is where some of the greatest ideas and thoughts came from. And if, no matter how bizarre you might think something might be, or far-fetched, if you can perceive it, then it has some relevance. Now, depending on the positivity and the negativity that it has on the surrounding, I believe in a universal mind in some senses, because we are one in a sense. That's what I believe. And so there is some balance and some harmony to things, so that we're not totally destroyed or destroy ourselves. I mean, talking about the spirit, soul, and mind, we do destroy ourselves through wars, of course. But the real person inside of us, the real us, needs to be explored. Ask yourself this question: who am I? What am I? What are the possibilities? And what will be? And what do I want? Start exploring yourself. Explore those things. Because in essence, when it comes down to it, you're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your own development. You only gather ideas from other things, and then you assimilate these ideas, and you develop. A teacher doesn't make you learn. A teacher allows you to take in small amounts of information and restructure it in such a way that you can understand it. A teacher is a guide. You are the vessel of learning. You're the one that learns. Teachers are a guide to help you to facilitate your ability to learn. You're doing it. They're not doing it. Just like a counselor will counsel you. All he's doing is allowing you to think on ways of making yourself better. Think about these things. Peace out. Keep researching. I'm going to end this video.